Welcome back. You're listening to the discussion Modern Government, Digital Transformation, Data, Collaboration, and Insights, sponsored by KPMG on Federal News Network. I'm your host, Jason Miller. My guest today is Kelly McCool, the Director of the Digital Warfare Office for the Navy N9. Now, Kelly, before break, we were talking a lot about Project Overmatch and one of your main goals around digital modernization. While that's a big project and there's a lot going on there, I'm sure that's not the only thing you're focused on. So are there other priorities or other things under the digital modernization category that you're also looking at?
Sure, absolutely. I would say the Navy's really just trying to catch up with industry. The commercial world has been leading in this area for so long. We're learning from the tech giants that have been out there, the Amazons and the Googles and Facebooks. But I would also say I really monitor the car industry. I see some closer analogies to our Navy modernization needs. And so that the car industry, their push to go electric is really a push to become a software-dominant design system. And the car industry has this heritage of being very vehicle-centric and building unique models that are individual, but they're transforming and moving to a software-centric area with common software platforms, but they don't want to lose the greatness that they have as car producers. And so I see a lot of analogies with the Navy here as we try to move away from this hardware-centric platform, but we have our legacy systems and we're not going to be able to start with a clean slate. So the balance is we need all of our aircraft, our subs, our shipboard combat systems. We need to get to this modernized software capability so that we can have this networked force. And Project Overmatch is absolutely our leading candidate here. We're going to learn a ton from it, but there's so much more that we're going to have to do to become that truly modernized force and have these network systems operating together.
Have you gotten a tour yet of some of those electric vehicle plants? Have you gotten a sense to say, okay, shipbuilding is much different than car building, but I'm sure there's some, as you said, your analogies is a really good one.
Yeah, I haven't actually. That's on my to-do list, though, right. For sure.
Well, maybe they'll watch and you'll get an invite from our time together. There's a lot more to talk to, but we have to touch upon data because that's one of your third parties, Decision Advantage, which is all about the data. So let's start at the beginning in terms of how the Navy is really ensuring that sailors and seamen have the right data to make the best decisions. Talk about your data strategy a little bit.
Our priority on digital integration is really about how do we improve our data transport and move that data to and from the tactical edge, as well as across platforms, across services, across headquarter activities. But I would say that the fact that we can improve how much data gets to the warfighter, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be able to make better, quicker decisions with it. In fact, more data can often cause decision paralysis, and especially when that data is confusing or the environment is just overwhelming. And so we need the right tools and the right algorithms to really simplify what is presented to the fleet. So what we're focused on is what are the right decisions that need to get made, by who, and where is the decider physically located. So are they on an aircraft carrier? Or are they underwater in a sub far forward? Are they on a destroyer, or are they on a headquarters facility in the States? And that really matters. And so working with the fleet to have that deep knowledge of how Navy plans and executes, that's really where we're going to gain our money. And really focusing on those decision support tools to eliminate those friction points, that's really where we think we'll get to the better, faster decisions.
How does it work today, generally speaking? If I'm on a ship in the Pacific, is data getting to me at a satellite speed? Is it getting to me at how? And where would you like to see it go, just generally?
Yes.
Every situation is going to be different. In a sub, it's different than on a fleet, different than headquarters. But what's the end goal starting to look like?
Well, certainly, we have to have the flexibility to operate with extensive bandwidth in peacetime, but then very minimal bandwidth when there's an interest in not being detected, or or B, you just need certain information and you need to be really concise about what that is. So it's also a matter of how do you prioritize the data that gets moved to the forward edge, because in addition to confusing the operator, we do not have the bandwidth now. It will improve as our space layer evolves and as our software modernization takes place, but I do believe we will always have significant limitations as we operate forward.
It's interesting you bring up space again. I just did an interview with the Space and Training Command in Space Force, and they talked a lot about getting the right skill sets for the Guardians, and I think the data piece is so key, not just they understand how the data works, but because of that issue you just brought up is that space will play a much bigger role. The other balancing act that you have with data is speed versus security. Mm-hmm. You want to make sure they can get it so the bandwidth can increase, but then again, it has to be secure. So if you're going to encrypt it, that's potentially can slow it down too, and then you have to worry about the adversaries, China, Russia, whomever, tapping into your data. So how are you trying to strike that right balance?
Yeah, so security has a lot of different aspects to it, but when I think about the DevSecOps capabilities that are provided, we actually will be improving our security posture. So we'll be getting updates to the fleet quicker, and we'll be improving our cybersecurity posture. Our current ways or legacy ways are to check for cyber vulnerabilities late in the process, after you're done development. Now we can check it continuously, much earlier in the development. And then if there is a need, a new threat vector, that's certainly something that can be provided very rapidly. And so I think in that aspect, we're improving things. There's always work to be done to make sure we're not being compromised in our data. And so we are actually, I would say we do that today. We're pretty skilled at how we do that. There's always room for improvement, especially as we go to the software modernization, that we want to keep that aspect continuing to evolve as well.
The DevSecOps piece is obviously Sec is in the middle of development and operations, and what I hear is it's the really bringing it, pushing it. What's it, to the left, to the right?
Earlier.
To the left.
It is.
Can you talk a little bit about, though, there's more than just the DevSecOps piece. It's also the understanding of, okay, today we still have to get data to decision makers and we have to balance the speed with security. Are there steps in the short term you can take? Because it sounds like Project Overmatch is one example, but the DevSecOps process is still several years out. You still have some short-term needs. Is there anything that you can point to that says, okay, this is how we're addressing that issue?
I would say, in general, we're making our networks more resilient and more secure.
Yeah.
And I would probably leave it at that.
All right. Well, that's always good. I know little sensitivities when we talk about security. The other piece of this is the AI, machine learning, predictive analytics, and we know there's a lot of work being done to get ahead of, for instance, when something fails, a piece of hardware fails. It could be. I'll just dumb it down for folks like myself. A ship anchor needs to be replaced every so many times it's used. You can use predictive analytics for that, but then it really impacts also across the board all the pieces and parts that goes into any ship, any sort of carrier. Talk a little bit about where these new technologies fit in.
Sure. So the way I think of AI and predictive analytics and ML is really what are the unique areas where we're overwhelmed with data or the problem is so complex that we really need the help of AI so that we're not just spending our time sifting through the data, we're actually quickly making sense of it and getting to decision making. So we have a few areas that we're really focused on, and we have work that's been done and is still going on. I think the most common theme, though, is in maritime domain awareness. When you think about the Pacific and how big it is and just the amount of water that covers our world, this area is really ripe for AI and ML. Our intel communities, our oceanographic communities, they have been playing in this space for quite a while. And so we have a lot to learn from their experiences, especially in the area of cloud use versus on-prem data centers. and dealing with vast volumes of data. But as the technology is maturing, this edge compute for AI at the tactical edge is really interesting, and it's most likely really where we need to go, especially for unmanned platforms. So one of our key innovation engines is the Unmanned Task Force, as well as Task Force 59, which is our fleet operational battle lab, is what we call it. And in that regard, they're working very closely with industry, and this is emerging industry players in this space, not necessarily your traditional DoD primes. And what they're really trying to get after is, how do I use AI and ML in smaller unmanned platforms so that you're synthesizing the data much more quickly, you're getting to reduce the workload of the operator, and you're optimizing your decisions. So this tactical edge for unmanned systems and manned-unmanned teaming, that's an area that we're highly interested in, and we're going to need to advance here in the future.
When you go back to the maritime domain awareness, you talk about Intel and oceanographic communities using some of this. Are there some lessons that you're pulling from them? Are there some, that's a technology that they use, maybe we could use it for some of these other areas? What's the sharing, collaboration?
I think the sharing and collaboration, as the Digital Warfare Office lead, I actually have an agreement that though I work for N9, Admiral Khan, I also work for the head of Navy Intel, Admiral Trussler, because these worlds are, as we talk about ubiquitous sensors, the intelligence community and the operators are blending more. And so our lessons are in the area of data management and in data compression, I would say, and figuring out what needs to be at the tactical edge.
And the unmanned stuff is obviously fascinating. That's another area. Are there some prototypes or some pilots or whatever, proof of concepts around, applying, whether it's AI or machine learning or some other kind of emerging technologies into the unmanned platforms? Are you there yet, or is it still in that planning stage?
I would say it's still in it's more than in the planning stage. It's in the exploration stage, and so the Task Force 59 people and the Unmanned Task Force certainly could give you a lot more. A lot better description, but they are in the exploration phase, and then let's look at what should transition into operations.
Right, something to maybe follow up with them about. It sounds very exciting. Unmanned things, vehicles or efforts are very exciting. Kelly, we're just about out of time. Before I let you go, what's the big takeaway from our conversation today? What's the message you want to make sure that folks are left with about the work you're doing in Navy N9?
Yeah, sure. I think we're really focused on that digital modernization. How do we get to a place where, as our CNO puts it, we can have a move, counter move capability. So deliver a capability to the fleet, but then expect that the adversary will have some sort of unexpected reaction or counter, and us having the ability to react very quickly. So that's the most important thing that we're really trying to drive at as we go to this modernized digital world.
I very much enjoyed our conversation today. Unfortunately, we are out of time. So let me thank my guest. Kelly McCool is the director of the Digital Warfare Office in the Navy's N9. Kelly, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
I'm Jason Miller, and you've been listening to the discussion Modern Government, Digital Transformation, Data Collaboration, and Insights, sponsored by KPMG on Federal News Network. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search KPMG.